Trevor, Jen,
Yep.
they're all here.
Ready?
Looks like we got a 7-member panel on. It's 5:30, so I'm Matt Brockney. I'll call the meeting to order. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear.
All right.
Yep.
All right, very good. So first item of business then is we'll look at the agenda. Are there any amendments, Ryan?
No amendments to the agenda. However, I noticed it made an error on the agenda sheet. Improvements should be December 8th instead of January 8th.
12/8/20. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody care to make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
I'll move approval, Steger.
Eager motion,
Second, Hamel.
and we'll second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, I will go by roll call. Weenus,
Aye.
Hamel,
Aye.
Prinz,
Aye.
Steger,
Aye.
Holzai,
Aye.
Hooker,
Aye.
and Rockney, aye. Motion carries 7-0-0. Next item, the December 8th, 2020 minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Any questions? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Weenus.
I'll second it.
Go ahead.
Was that Holzai?
Yeah, Holzai.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, Weenus,
Aye.
Hamel,
Aye.
Prinz,
Aye.
Steger,
Aye.
Holzai,
Aye.
Hooker,
Aye.
Rockney, aye. Motion carries 7-0-0. Number 4, no public hearings. Number 5, old business fences. We're still looking at possibly whether to go with fences in front yards or not. Ryan has checked around with some other cities. Any report on that, Ryan?
Yes. So I talked to the zoning officials in Cannon Falls, Pine Island, and Byron. In all 3 cities, they allow fences in the front yards to varying degrees. They all allow it being no higher than 48 inches or 4 feet. In Cannon Falls, law says that fences cannot be allowed in the right of way and that they have to be 50% open to allow for the passage of light and air. In Pine Island, they say that it cannot
Pardon
be.
me. Could he get closer to the mic? We can't understand what he's saying.
Thank you, Bill.
And then I'll turn on this other mic.
Okay, that's good.
Here you go. Thank you. Okay, so Cannon Falls, would you like me to repeat from what Cannon Falls has?
Yes, we
Yep.
didn't hear it the first of all.
So Cannon Falls, they say no higher than 48 inches and nothing in the right of way. And it has to be 50% open to allow for the passage of light and air. In Pine Island, they say nothing over 48 inches, at least 75% out, open to allow for the passage of air and light, and has to be 10 feet back from the lot line. In Byron, they say no closer than 18 inches from a sidewalk, a public sidewalk, and at least 15 feet back from the curb line. And then if it's on a corner lot, it has to be 25 feet back to allow for visibility. So all 3 cities allow for fences in the front yard.
Am I mistaken, or does it say that we don't allow fences in the front yard? I thought we just had to have a 30-foot setback.
Our city?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been interpreting the ordinance for years that no fences allowed in the front yard. So the
Oh,
question, this came up with that one on Main Street and the variance.
right.
And then we thought, well, maybe it's time to revisit that because sometimes our ways are a little antiquated. So we can, that's why we instructed Ryan to check around with other cities. And if we either wanted to stick to our guns that no fences allowed in front yards, then we could either leave our ordinance as is or tweak it so that to make sure that everybody
Right.
understands it's not allowed, or we can take a look at what other cities have done and think about allowing it.
Yeah, I see. It was at number 2 where the question was which one was, okay.
So we're more in a policy, it's more of a policy question now or a planning question, whether we want to take another look at it and move in a direction, work up a possible new ordinance, call a public hearing, put it in front of city council or not.
Well, right now if you see on the memorandum, under number 1, no fence shall exceed 4 feet in the front yard. So there's already language that allows it in the front yard.
Yeah.
It would be a matter of interpretation or additional language to
I think we
clarify.
talked about this for 2 months.
Yeah.
Historically, we've interpreted that whole ordinance as not allowing it. There's a question of where the front and side yard, actually, if you look at it word for word, it's not allowed in 30 feet. So it could still be in the front yard if you got a deep front yard. And then there's that question on placement of commas on whether fence is opaque or whatever. I can't remember the language. So I'm kind of moving on beyond that. I think we're just talking about whether we want to go a direction or not. And if we do want to go one direction or another, whether we want to tighten up the ordinance as it is or redo it and allow it.
But now we have a fence in the front yard on Main Street, don't we?
Allowed through a variance.
Yeah.
That doesn't set a
Is
precedent.
that right up? Right. Is that right up to his sidewalk? I can just see it driving by, but I don't know how.
There's no
Does
sidewalk
that
there.
fence come right up?
That's right.
Oh,
There's no-
Okay, that's pretty close to the road. Yep.
If we decide to go forward and allow fences, and let's say we adopted the Cannon Falls or Pine Island or Byron approach, that would just be a new ordinance going forward prospectively. Whatever we allowed on Main Street is on its own island, and that doesn't set any precedent on us.
I guess my personal opinion is I'm not a fan of fences in the front yard. So I guess I would leave our ordinance the way it is and address variances as they come up, like the one on Main Street.
I agree with that.
Who said that?
Bev.
Jose?
Yeah, sometimes it does get to be a problem with the visibility and, even if you can see through the fence, it can cause a problem of,
Mhm.
not being able to see what's going on.
Yeah, they hang a sign on it or something.
I know in a bigger city, drive down, I don't know, some parts of Minneapolis, whatever, I think there's lots of front yard fences, but yeah, I guess it's maybe what we want to see and if we've got any good reasons for it or not.
I just question in the wording in that first paragraph, it says no fence shall exceed 4 feet in the front yard. Well, that sentence implies that a fence in the front yard would be allowed.
I think there's a 30-foot setback though, so if you got a deep front yard,
Right.
you could.
Right.
So either way, we could tweak our ordinance the way right now, if we want to adjust it.
Well, has this come up very often, or is this like the first time that it's been an issue? We don't know.
My memory, it doesn't come up very often, but now that it's on the front burner, we might as well address it rather than just.
Oh,
being
no, no,
about it.
I just wondered if it was something that came up often, because then, it'd be harder to do. But if it doesn't come up often, then leaving it, like it is, wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't affect too many people.
I guess if there's still some interpretation questions on, do we allow 4 feet in the front yard, but it has to be 30 feet setback? Do we allow it if it's chain link or not? I still think we could address those issues and tighten up the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not saying we have to figure it out tonight. It's more of a talking point. Sometimes on this planning commission, if you've been on this for a while, we've revisited and discussed potential tweaks to ordinances for months until we come to a consensus. So I don't think there's a big rush, but if we want to go a certain direction, let's do it.
I was curious, is the consensus that we prefer not to have fences in the front yard? Does everybody think that way? I do.
I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Me too.
I guess I'm not sure if I have a strong opinion either way right now. I do think, that in some communities where I've lived, they've kind of taken an approach that kind of looks at what the usability of the yard is as well. So that, like in some cases, like I'm thinking of that one on Main, where maybe the backyard isn't really usable at all. And so this really is the only option for that type of lot. But other than that, I don't really have a strong opinion.
I'm good with it the way it is.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of fences anywhere, but that's just me. But yeah, I don't necessarily think we need them in front yards either. But that's not necessarily to stop us from making the ordinance a little bit subject to better interpretation, since Ryan had an issue of it when the Main Street property came up to begin with. So we could just absolutely put a prohibition on fences entirely in the front yard or within a 30-foot setback from the front lot line. Maybe Ryan and I can just take a look at the language of the ordinance and offer some language suggestions so that it's not misinterpreted in the future as easily.
Well, another question comes into play. If somebody has a thick hedge along the way, that's as opaque as a heavy fence.
Right? Are there any in town now, front yard hedges?
I know along with lilac bushes,
Yeah.
my house. Don't touch Judy's lilac bushes. That's probably 30 feet back.
And
I think
over the
that
hill
would
on
fall
6th
under the,
Street there.
I think hedges fall under screening.
Okay.
Which is not allowed, right?
Correct. This is in under paragraph 2 with
Right.
fences and structures.
Right. So do we not want any types of opaque hedges in the front yard? I guess that's the question. Or we allow some things and not others?
Good question.
Right, could you remind me, does our current code allow, does it address that percent transparent like the others do or not?
No.
It does not.
Okay. Maybe that's a
We
question
just
that
say-
we would want to address then.
Yeah, and then we also say that the shrubs and hedges should be set back at least 3 feet from the lot line.
The setback that was amended in Okay. Okay, yeah, there was an amendment for fences, but it doesn't state, yeah, it still
Item
says in
five.
paragraph 5, that hedges and shrubs need to be 3 feet from the lot lines. Fences can go
Mhm.
up to the lot line.
Would you say that again, Ryan? I know we talked about that several years ago, whether the fence was going to be 3 feet off the lot line or on the lot line. Would you say what you said again, please?
Under paragraph 5 and 6, it
Yes.
says that shrubs and hedges have to be 3 feet back from the lot line, and that fences
Yes.
in other parts of the yard can go up to, but not on top of the lot line.
Okay.
If we did do what Jen maybe suggested, where a certain percentage, then we'd have to further define what that is. Does that mean it has to be complete open space and you can have the portions that have some screening or shrubs, whatever? Or does that mean, where does the chain link fence come into play, since that's at least straight on, you can see through it? So we'd have to think about that. I don't know, maybe we all need to hop in a bus and drive around town or something, huh?
Yeah. Or maybe like you said, if it's not a problem, leave it alone.
Well, there is always that. But the reason this came up in the first place was that there was an interpretation issue that Ryan had. So it's like, well, if our own planning commission person, administrator can't interpret it, then maybe we need to firm up the language regardless.
And I think that's what we need to do. I think we just need to kind of leave it where it's at, but just clean it up to make it a little bit more cleaner. But like I said, we could spend months on just trying to revise it to allow fences. So my option would be to clean it up and move on from there.
Well, maybe Ryan and I, if that's some gathering from everybody's input, maybe that's the consensus. So maybe Ryan and I could take a look at that language and then bring back something at the next meeting for review and comment.
That sounds like a good idea.
All right, I don't even know if we need a motion on that.
It's your call.
No,
Okay.
we'll just do that. All right. Anything else on fences, or should I move on to the next item? Anybody? All right, we'll go on to number 6, new business request from EDA regarding 2101 180th. Ryan?
Yes. I spoke with Mr. Cheney, so a bit of background. The EDA has requested that the old Alco building on the western side of Highway 52, that now has a tenant, Family Dollar, and they're only using up a portion of the overall building. That's leaving approximately 6,300 square feet of space that is not being used. And because of the shape of the non-use, it's making it difficult for him to find other tenants. So the EDA has requested a city staff and planning and zoning to look into if there's a way to allow other uses within that remaining space. Mr. Cheney has expressed that he would like to use it for just general commercial storage and rent it out for that. And last month, there was a question by committee members here as to if you would allow adding on an additional loading dock. So when I spoke with Mr. Cheney, he said that his intended plans for future improvements to allow more tenants, and he would likely add another loading dock and along the western side when he secures another tenant. and then that the customer entrance would go through the existing vestibule. And attached within the supporting documentation, the last attachment for this, I created a graphic that shows where an additional loading dock would be, and that the customer entrance would be through that existing foyer or vestibule. So the question is, would an interim use permit be granted, or would it be favorable with the committee to grant an interim use permit for that change of use?
Has he requested one, or is he just sort of
He's
inquiring?
he said he would like that.
Is he talking a multi-people storage place or just like one commercial customer storage? You know, like a used storage kind of place.
Yeah, my understanding it would be just a commercial multi-use or multi-customer
Okay.
instead of one single customer.
Yeah, what would be going in there? Like boats or classic cars or miscellaneous boxes? Do we know?
Won't be any boats anytime soon because there's no dock or anything.
Right.
Anything of any size back there.
Yeah.
Until he puts one in.
I know the biggest concern is the traffic flow in the front. So I still think if we allow this, and I understand, I don't want to be getting his way. I mean, I'd like to see that place be successful. So I understand that L-shaped perimeter it's going to be limited use. Personally, I don't have a problem with it being any storage as long as there's no disruption in the front, like we were talking about at the last meeting. So
Right.
that's my opinion on it.
Before this came up, when they had the other storage units out there, I guess that was before I was on the council here. What are the issues that came with that?
I believe the history was it was being used as an industrial storage, as warehousing
Okay.
by the commercial water filters, and it prevented its other use, which is its zoned use, which is commercial. So since it was an industrial use, that prevented other tenants from coming in and using it as a commercial use. So the interim use permit then, when that expired, we pressured Mr. Cheney to, and commercial water filters to increase their own industrial storage elsewhere and bring it back within conforming use.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
right.
situa-
Go ahead.
I'll say that situation doesn't mean any problems for what we're talking about now, does it?
In allowing that storage before?
Well, I mean, the fact that we said you couldn't have that industrial storage there before for an extended period of time, are we going down that same road now, or is it going to, that's why I said it was going to be different kind of storage.
No, I think the big thing here was last time around, that was the entire use. Now we've got a commercial use in there, but we are going beyond the incidental 30% storage limit. So that would be the reason why it would still be an interim use with some restrictions and timelines rather than a complete wide open permitted use.
Okay.
And we know from past experience that he doesn't pay too much attention to timelines. Remember the times we had trying to get him out of there when we wanted it, when it expired, and then he wouldn't move. That got to be quite a hassle.
Well, let's just say hypothetically we allowed this interim use permit, it'd probably be renewable annually. And if we've had problems with it, we wouldn't renew it.
That makes
And then
sense.
if he tries to be difficult about it or refuses to shut down, then we're forced to get an injunction.
Okay, that sounds good. Last time I know we just kept extending it, for him.
Well, we were trying to be accommodating, but at the same time, nudge him in the direction we thought it should be going.
Yes.
I don't see a problem with him making some money on it as long as generally it's a retail place like it is now. Or coming up.
Do we have any idea if, who is it? Family
Dollar.
Dollar has any issues with it? We obviously want them to give their blessing.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. Do they have any input as to what would be stored in that area behind their store?
Or would that be a
Do we
question
know?
between them and Mr. Cheney?
Yeah, or would it be right?
Yeah, I think the question would be traffic flow outside the parking, like Matt had said before. I don't think that they need to have any control of what's going on in the rest of the building unless they want to rent the rest of the building.
Or unless it's going to be somehow noisy or disruptive or something.
Right. Yep.
I'm on
So
board
what
with
do we
what you
want
said.
to, go ahead.
I would say, yeah, I'm on board with what you said, Matt, as long as it's not disruptive to the general operations out there. What the heck?
So sounds like Ryan, is he looking for like
Permission to proceed, I guess.
okay, so the burden would be back on him to proceed with the formal request, and then he'd lay out the initial criteria, and we'd say whether we're okay with his conditions, and if we want to add conditions, rather than, he's not expecting us to just come up with all of our conditions from scratch, right?
Correct.
Okay. What do we think about that? Are we in a position where we at least tell him that we're not opposed to it, and then he can go through the interim use permit process, come up with his own conditions, and then we can have a more official review at the meeting after he files for it? Does that sound reasonable?
That's probably the best way to go about it.
All right. Maybe that requires a motion. Anybody want to care to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. Hamel.
What's the motion going to say exactly?
Todd?
I think we should just be giving them a general indication that we're open to the idea, and I don't know if that needs a motion.
Probably doesn't, but I guess we've got one on the floor. I
Just
guess
kind of what you were talking about, Matt.
I'm okay with a motion and a second and approval, instructing staff to get back to that we're not opposed to him filing for an interim use permit.
Would that be the motion?
Yes, would that be the motion, Todd?
Correct.
Well, I'd second
I'll
that.
second that, Weenus.
Go ahead.
Okay.
All right, a motion, a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, Weenus,
Aye.
Hamel,
Aye.
Prinz,
Aye.
Eager,
Aye.
Bullseye,
Aye.
Hooker,
Aye.
Rockne, aye. Motion carries 7-0-0. On to 7A reports, annual report. Ryan.
Yes. Every year, this is prompted by the EDA, and in the EDA bylaws, I compile a annual report. But a large section of this involves the planning and zoning. So is only to the benefit that I present this annual report to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. As a lot of the business activity involves development and construction, especially filling out, making use of various land use. So for various business activities, on page 2, you'll see that there were a number of commercial and industrial and institutional developments, including Three Rivers Community Action. Included an addition valued at 3,100 square foot addition at over $300,000. Zumbrota Mazeppa schools have additions at valued at over $20 million. A new building for reliable heating and cooling, DFA additions that are valued at over $28 million. Zumbrota Ford is adding a new building, $300,000 solar garden. Family Dollar, a remodel that's valued at over $200,000. And Quick Trip, an addition valued at over $800,000. Going to page 7, we have the Planning Commission section. And there were 5 variances in 2020, including one at 610 Lincoln Avenue to allow a shed in the rear yard setback, 118 East 4th Street to allow more than 2 structures in the rear yard, and 300 Jefferson Drive to allow an additional dwelling unit in a detached structure on the lot, 220 West 1st Street to allow an extension of a shop building into the rear yard of the lot, and 780 South Main Street to allow a fence in the front yard. There was one new plat, Zumbrota of Highlands 6, that allowed for 30 new lots for single-family homes. There were 4 minor subdivisions at 1313 North Star Drive to allow for a land swap with 975 North Star Drive, and then at 695 and 695 East Jefferson Drive to allow an unbuildable portion of a lot to be transferred to an adjacent property, and 664 East 4th Street to allow for a transfer portion to an adjacent property. There were 4 conditional use permits granted in 2020 at 24 Jefferson Drive to allow for a bulk storage tank, at 17331 460th Street to allow for an 8-acre solar garden, at 175 West 4th Street to allow for the installation of a 6-foot section of fence into the floodway, and 505 Main Street North to allow for the expansion of gravel mining activities. There was 1 completed annexation in the city that along East 9th Street, 160th or 190th Avenue Way. The city annexed 9.81 acres as the city to allow for better control and orderly growth of the city and the appropriate extension of city services. There were 0 zoning changes in 2020, and for building permits, you'll see that total valuation, there were 139 new building permits issued for a total valuation of $58,944,157. And we've added 29 new residential units and 2 new commercial buildings. There are 15 other commercial additions and remodels that allowed for a reinvestment in that commercial industrial activity. So the total active subdivisions for residents and commercial and industrial, you'll see that Charleston, 1st and 2nd, is 88% complete. Zumbrota Woodlands, 1st and 2nd, they're at 70% complete. Highlands, including all 6 subdivisions, or all 6 additions, are at 67% complete. And it should be noted that there's still a large section of outlot that needs to be platted. That should add over 100 new lots, at least. The Sugarloaf Estates of Zumbrota is 83% complete. Woodlands replat is 73%. Jacobson Commercial Park is at 83% complete, and the Highway 52 Southwest Business Park, which is where Midwest Livestock and Midwest Fabrication are, that's at 71% complete. One item to note is, had it here, yes, in 2019, one of the differences between 2019 and 2020 is that in 2019, the city added 8 mobile homes, and in 2020, we've only added 1 mobile home. So even though we've added fewer mobile homes and overall residential units, there was only a difference of $500,000 yet less this year than, or this past year than in 2019. So the residential units that are going into the city are single family homes, generally valued at over $200,000 each on the low end. So what that does is it could have implications going on years down the road. It's important to future planning, because if more expensive homes are the only ones that are going in, then it becomes more and more difficult for people starting out to enter into the residential districts in Zumbrota. So it could be a growing disparity between people who already have and are doing just fine, and those who do not have or have lesser means. It's maybe a growing gap for them to actually enter into, especially into adding equity. So that is just one consideration for future planning as we, once we plan future land uses. Are there any other questions or any questions?
Where do you think you'll find room for houses that are of lesser value? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, generally that would happen when you allow people who are ready to downsize to move out of their single family homes. So this year, we will be adding a 57 unit apartment complex. And I believe they're planning to open it around 2023. The plan would be for that, for people who are wanting to downsize, to move into there, or we add focus more on senior family or on senior housing. So that way people will move out of those older single family homes that are around the $100,000 to $200,000 value. So that way, yeah, so it ends up taking them or allows them to move out of there and lets others be able to move into them.
Yeah, but in all truth, you won't find houses in Zumbrota selling for, like you say, from 100 to 200,000. They just aren't.
Right.
250,000 is probably a median price, but there aren't many homes in Zumbrota that would be worth moving into that would cost less than, say, 175 or 180.
Right. So that's because there's such a high demand that even though elsewhere homes that might be valued at or maybe only worth, say, 150,000, there's such a high demand for housing that it's pushing or it's inflating that value to like over 200,000.
Exactly, and it's also due to the fact where we're located, between Minneapolis and Rochester. We're a prime location. So prices aren't, they aren't going to go down, that's for sure. But what we do need is senior housing, absolutely. That would loosen up some houses for some younger families coming in or people that weren't making, $150,000 a year, so they could afford to buy up some of these houses.
Yes, and hopefully, if not senior housing, at least this apartment complex would hopefully absorb some of that demand. But we'll have, as city staff, we would have to work with developers on encouraging more and more senior housing and houses that are of greater density and just overall that require less maintenance.
Right, and a house that the seniors could live in, could age in place in the house where they were built, where they were handicap accessible and usable for somebody that was over, age 70. Then they would stay in town. They wouldn't have to get down to Rochester and move into the Waters and all those nice places down there. There'd be a place for them to be right here.
Exactly. So that is one of the goals on my action plan going forward.
Other questions or comments for Ryan? All right. I'll go to number 8 unless anybody else has anything. I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you. So long.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.